In this presentation, I'm going to show you how to create a multi-tier ODBC data source name, or DSN, on a Mac OSX client operating system. If you intend to create your own Progress DSNs on a Windows, Unix, or Linux operating system, you want to stop now and you want to locate the video in the series that pertains to your client OS. This video presumes that you know some basic information about your target Progress database. You need to know if your database is running in sockets or shared memory mode, and you need to know if your database is accepting SQL 89 connections, SQL 92 connections, or both. If you do not know the answers to these questions, you need to locate the video on Progress connectivity prerequisites. Finally, the video does presume that you have a functional copy of OpenLink's multi-tier server components installed somewhere on your network. If you have not installed the multi-tier server components, or if you do not know if you have installed the multi-tier server components, you want to locate the video that the installation configuration of these products, or you want to locate the person within your organization who would be responsible for this installation. That said, let's start. We're going to access our Mac's applications folder. We're going to locate and expand the utility subfolder, locate and launch the OpenLink ODBC administrator. Here you have the option of creating user DSNs, system DSNs, or file DSNs. OpenLink recommends that you always work with system DSNs, so we're going to click that tab. Here, click the Add button. Locate the OpenLink generic ODBC driver within the list of drivers. Typically, there is a choice between a Unicode and non-Unicode version of the OpenLink generic ODBC driver. You would only select the Unicode driver if you're working with multi-byte character sets. That's the type of character set that Chinese is encoded in and other foreign characters as well. If you're not working with multi-byte character sets, don't choose the Unicode driver. Go with the non-Unicode driver like I'm doing here. Click Finish. Here you're prompted for a name for your data source or DSN. Provide any suitable title. Just keep it brief and don't use any special characters. Description is an optional field. You can use it to write a reminder to yourself about the nature or purpose of the DSN, maybe state what it connects to. Server. This is the field in which you pass the host name of the machine that contains the OpenLink multi-tier server components installation. You also need to pass the port on which the OpenLink request broker listens. The request broker is a part of the multi-tier server components. It's the component that's responsible for answering any client request for ODBC connectivity that uses the OpenLink driver. Here you want to ensure that manual settings is checked from the list. This should prompt a secondary dialog box to appear in which you can pass that host name or IP address and that port number I mentioned earlier. Click OK. Click Continue. Domain. This is a drop-down field. If you click the arrow associated with the drop-down, you're going to see that there are a lot of DBMSs represented here, many of which are not Progress. I will say briefly that each of these entries that you see here, whether it's in Formix, MySQL, so forth, they all have a corresponding entry in the multi-tier server components primary configuration file. That file is called the rules book, and the rules book matches each of these VMS names with a set of environment variables that need to be set before a connection can take place. So if you're working with progress, selection of one of these values tells the request broker that you need to use DLC set to this path, or you need to use ProCFG set to that path. Now, if you're working with progress 10, you're always going to be passing progress space 100 SQL. There are very few instances in which you would not be passing this. But if you are connecting to progress 10, you're establishing a socket space connection, you're connecting in SQL 92 mode, this value right here at the top, that's what you'd want to select. Now, if you're going to connect to progress 9 in SQL 92 mode, also using sockets, I'll show you which value you'd select. That would be this value here, progress space 91 SQL. Doesn't matter what version of progress you're using, it's always going to be this one. If you were going to connect to progress 9 or progress 8 in SQL 89 mode, also called 4GL mode, you would select the value in the list that pertains to the OpenLink database agent that you downloaded. Say you want to connect to Progress 91D and you downloaded a Progress 91D database agent. This is the value you would select, Progress 91D. Say you wanted to connect to Progress 91E and OpenLink only provided a Progress 91D database agent for your operating system. You would still check this Progress 91D entry because that is the version of the OpenLink database agent that you're going to use to establish your connection. From here it gets a little bit more straightforward. Name takes the name of the progress database to which you want to connect. If that database is running on Unix, it's always best to pass the full path to the database, the .db extension. If the database is running on Windows, you can often get away with just passing the database name itself with the .db extension. Connection. This takes the socket parameters that were used to start progress, presuming it was actually started in sockets. So if your database is running in sockets, you'd pass -S, space followed by the socket service it uses, space -N, space followed by TCP, that's the network protocol, space -H, space followed by the host name on which progress is running. You can also pass the IP address here too. Now, if your database is running in shared memory, you're not going to have any socket parameters. So this field would actually be left blank. Connect now. You do want to check this box. Pass in a progress username, the associated progress password, click continue. Now by clicking the continue button with Connect Now checked, a base test was performed to ensure that the parameters you passed thus far are valid. The fact that we've arrived at this screen here shows that they were valid. We can expect a successful test connection going forward. At this point, I'm going to skip over these parameters that you see on the option field. These are aimed at advanced configuration. Some of them pertain to troubleshooting or performance tuning. These are parameters that you don't need to worry about if you're just getting up and running with the product. So you can revisit the use of these parameters in another video. So click continue and click the test data source button, and like I said, we have established a successful connection. At this point, the DSN is ready for use for any of your applications on the Mac OSX client. This concludes this lesson.